Hey everybody, Coach Kyle here again. Today I want to talk a little bit about migraines. So I know we talk a lot about chronic pain here, and what we have found is that this same kind of approach to chronic pain also works very, very well for migraines. And some of the most recent neuroscience understanding of migraines and how they work, uh, it makes sense why, because they seem to be stemming from the same kinds of root cause. So there's a lot of misunderstanding about migraines. In the past, it's been commonly understood to be a real structural issue, some abnormality or some problem in the brain or the blood vessels in the brain. And a lot of that's because we can see the effects of a migraine in the brain. It does cause physical manifestations of things going on, such as, um, in the blood vessels in the brain, they can change. We can see things like inflammation, things like that. And these are responses to what's happening in a migraine, which we'll get into in a moment. So, what is a migraine? Let's talk about that. So, just as we talked about, in some of the other videos with how pain works, we have all these sensors or nociceptors throughout our body. They're in our brain as well. And once a threshold is passed on each of these sensors, they turn on and they start sending a signal to the brain. The brain sees that and can interpret that as dangerous and create pain as a result, as we've learned. Now, the interesting thing about these sensors, and we didn't really talk about that much in the other video, but that threshold, the sensitivity of these sensors is variable. It's not, you know, set to one point and it's always staying there. That threshold or that sensitivity can be changed by the brain, can also be changed by chemical interactions in the body. So one of the most common pain relieving medications, for example, NSAIDs or non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, that's actually how they work. They change the sensitivity, they reduce the sensitivity of those sensors in our body. So if I were to smash my thumb with a hammer, that's very sensitive for a time after that injury. And that's because that sensitivity has been changed. And that makes sense. I'm going to be more careful of that injury if it is more sensitive. And after the healing process, it is well underway, that sensitivity returns back to normal. Um, so just one example of the sensitivity variability of these sensors. Now, with a migraine, basically what's happening is the sensitivity of these sensors, and primarily these are in the blood vessels in our brain. There isn't much of these sensors just in brain matter itself. They tend to be located in the blood vessels, which is why sometimes it's been commonly thought to be a vascular problem in the brain. So these sensors in around and near and in the blood vessels of the brain becomes overly sensitized, and sometimes to such a degree where just existing is interpreted as dangerous to the brain. So imagine all these sensors being lit up like, oh my gosh, something is really, really wrong here. That's why migraine headaches can be so debilitating, so painful, because your brain is seeing information that something is seriously, seriously wrong. Um, so that's basically what a migraine is. Now, like I said earlier, this causes real physical things to happen in the body, such as inflammation, such as blood flow, changes in the blood flowing through our brain, which also cause other symptoms. Now, but again, those symptoms we're seeing, those physical changes that we're seeing are not the cause. It's not what is causing the migraine. That's just a result. So some clarification that we've gotten for more recent research and what's being caused and what's cause versus what's effect, right? Just because these things happen with a migraine doesn't mean they're causing it. Um, So what we're understanding now is that migraines typically are happening when people feel some intense pressure, um, or from like patterns of thought, intense levels of stress in their life for various reasons, really intense periods of work or effort. Um, it's very common that chronic migraines are happening at the end of the week or at the end of the workday after we've put ourselves through a lot of pressure for some reason. Um, so there tends to be this connection with our thoughts, our emotions, our activities and behaviors, as well as our past experience. So this is why um, this pain reprocessing therapy approach, this psychological approach to chronic pain, also works very, very well for chronic migraines. Um, Also, migraines can have a variability in how they present as well. They're not always just intense headaches. They can be ocular migraines, for example, affect our vision. They can affect our hearing. They can affect our sense of balance. Um, and part of that's dependent on, which sensors are being overly sensitized and where they are in the brain and how our brain and body is reacting to that oversensitization. But the process is essentially the same. It can just yield different results depending on the exact nature of how that all unfolds. Um, so that's migraines in a nutshell. So we see, and I'll use a common one, like changes in weather or specific weather patterns cause migraines. And, that has not been shown to be true, but not to dismiss anyone's experience with that. If you have a specific trigger for your migraines, um, it's likely not the direct cause, but it still has a causal relationship. Okay, so with the weather example, if every time it snows I get a migraine, well, what might be going on is that particular type or pattern of weather causes stress, or it causes negative emotions or negative thoughts that create this pressure in the brain and cause that oversensitization. So you can almost think of this like a protective mechanism, right? Like all pain is, um, where if we're putting all this pressure on ourselves and eventually our brain's like, whoa, that's enough, you're done, I'm cutting you off. Um, and nothing works quite like a migraine. I mean, you can't do anything when you're having a really bad migraine. So it forces you to take a break. It's not a fun break. It's not a break you're going to enjoy, but it's a break nonetheless. So, anyway, that's as far as I'll go in this video about migraines. I hope you found this informational and interesting. If you yourself or someone you know suffers from chronic migraines, this kind of approach could be very, very helpful. And it's not something that necessarily has to replace or should replace any medications you're taking for migraines. Um, and it often works very well um, in tandem with these other treatments, such as medication. So, if you're interested in learning more about this, possibly working with a coach through this pain recovery process, schedule your free discovery session. Totally free, no commitment. You'll get an hour of time with me, no obligation, no commitment, no charge. Um, get a good idea of what this process entails, what it requires of you, what it's all about, and if it's the right option for you or not. Check out my website. Please like and subscribe below, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks. Take care. Bye bye.